So I've been posting clips of Max Payne, which I've been playing. Now this is a game I haven't played since 2007. So given that, I thought it would be good to do a kind of a retrospective game analysis of the game and what I think of it after all this time. Now, in terms of the game design, what we have essentially is a quite simple mechanic involving the slowing down of time. That's it. Now on the surface that seems pretty simple, but it's the way it works in conjunction with other mechanics within the game that makes it quite dynamic. You have the management of different resources similar to a game like Doom, where on top of the shooting you're also having to manage your health levels and your ammo levels. But unlike in the game Doom, the enemy designs are not varied, they're all just essentially the same human enemies. Their variation comes in the form of their placement and the kind of weapons they have, which in some cases can kill you in one shot. So going back to my comment I said about the game mechanic being rudimentary in terms of the bullet time, yes, but there are all these other factors going on while you're using bullet time, making a lot of variation in the gameplay. Another factor in all of this is that you activating bullet time on its own does not save you. The player requires to have the skill to be able to activate it at the right time and angle, depending on what's going on, and the weapon that you're using. So as I mentioned before, all these elements come together and create a gameplay that has a lot of variety within it. Another thing I also noticed is that the bullet time in third person gives the game a lot of cinematic flair. Narrative in this game plays a massive role. It's sort of pushing the game forward, seeing what's around the next corner. You see the protagonist's motivation for the violence, to get to the bottom of what's happened to him and his family. The narrative and plot of the game helps to immerse the player in the world of Max Payne. Here the voice acting plays a critical role. From the low gritty voice of Max conveying the painful experiences of his life and his cynicism, to the various accents and styles that both help in building the New York setting of Max Payne.
I love to watch cartoons.
This aspect of the game in terms of voice acting really stands out to me, considering the game was developed over 20 years ago. Also aiding in the success of the voice acting in the game, in my opinion, is a superb quality of writing. Every line seems to hit its mark and aids in the narrative of the game, and the narrative helps to propel the game forward.
And then it was over.
In my opinion, Max Payne the game would not be the game without its protagonist and the story around him. Now, like other games of that time and before, the replayability would be achieved somewhat through difficulty settings. But on top of this, the game would give you enough different types of weapons to create different play styles and approaches. This would be something you first see in a game like Doom, where you have a range of different weapons, each unique on its own. Again, in this kind of era, this kind of game design choices would be inherent to the gameplay because the game is relying on itself rather than external factors for replayability. Rather, today you would see more multiplayer where the player creates the variation in the gameplay more than anything else. Now, what stood out to me playing the game was the attention to detail, especially after 16 years. Things such as different types of spread that came with different types of weapon types, on top of the level of destruction, such as like leaking extinguishers after explosions, fires, and the way enemies would move after being wounded, all seemed like a very high level of detail put into the game. I have to say the level of detail amazes me, given that this game was developed over 20 years ago. This could be down to the passion that the developers had for the game, which I'm sure was the case. It also could be down to things such as the size of the levels, which enable the developers to focus on this detail, as well as not having to reach such a high graphic fidelity of that era. One of the reasons why this detail stands out to me is that, in my opinion, I think the game would work just the same without it. One thing that also surprised me about the game, which I'll end with, is how challenging I found the gameplay. Here the game punishes you for not being precise. As mentioned before, enemies can kill you with one shot. This requires that you have some degree of skill in terms of shot placement. A headshot could be critical, but that's easier said than done pulling off. And as I mentioned before, execution and timing of bullet time is critical. All this while managing and searching for ammo and health. What this all amounts to is, as I mentioned before, having the skill to play the game. And this need for the skill immerses you in the gameplay. Now going back to what I always say comparing to multiplayer games, I found that Max Payne actually sucked me in more than playing a multiplayer game. Maybe this is because there's more skill required in the gameplay of Max Payne than in some multiplayer games.